Welcome to another edition of the YXE Sports Podcast, the last one for May. It is May 31st. We welcome you live inside Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar in Saskatoon. We're live on the Facebook page there. We're live on the YXE Sports Podcast Facebook page, and we're also live on YouTube at No YXE, and of course on all your favorite audio streaming services as well. So big thank you to everybody for joining us. Wray, this is how much we love doing this podcast, is that you can see behind us for everybody watching the live stream, the Game 7 between your Montreal Canadiens, my Toronto Maple Leafs, being called, of course, by our good buddy Chris Cuthbert in Toronto, where they're allowing 550 fully vaccinated fans to attend that game. We're going to get to that in a little bit, as we are going to get to the rest of the NHL story. But because of Game 7, this is going to be not really a rapid-fire episode, but a quicker episode than normal. It was absolutely gorgeous this weekend for the last weekend of May, and we didn't have an episode last week because of the May long weekend. So a ton of stuff to get to in terms of the NHL. But first, we're going to start off with some local news, and it was announced over the weekend that the Moosomin First Nation has plans to donate a horse racing track that is going to be in the RM of Cormorant Park, just northwest of Saskatoon. Nothing's been confirmed yet, but of course there was the devastating news of the Moosomin Downs situation not too long ago. So good on the Moosomin First Nation for stepping up and hopefully giving these people whose really is their livelihoods an opportunity to continue to do what they love to do.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into this, and obviously I haven't talked to everybody that's involved with that, but the fact that the Moosomin First Nation Economic Development Corporation has stepped up with this opportunity to give hope to horse racing fans with this news that they're interested in starting something up at Cormorant Park is very good. And I know not a lot, but there are some people that are a little bit concerned about Prairieland Park's move to kind of get out of horse racing. It is an industry that employs a lot of people, but it is an industry that hasn't always been profitable. And, you know, when you have somebody like Alan Simpson from Living Sky Sports come in, start to talk about something like soccer, a Canadian Premier League team that might generate more fans on a weekly basis, bring in a new sports crowd, and perhaps generate more revenue for Prairieland Park. It might simply come down to just a business decision. And again, I haven't talked to anybody involved with both, but it was sure nice to see that news come from the Moosomin First Nation Economic Development Corporation that they were interested in doing this. So, you know, we'll wait and see what happens. The other piece of news here is the fact that Moosomin Downs is ready to donate some of their equipment and some of the infrastructure that they have to this new venture. So, you know, I'm sure there's a lot to the story that I haven't had time to follow up on. But the fact that news, Matt, came to the people of Saskatoon, you know, at least for the horse racing fans that are around and for those that are employed, there is an opportunity. And that's good.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? This news is very fresh. It just came down this weekend, actually. So it's still very fresh and in the early stages, but definitely reason to be optimistic for that industry in and around Saskatoon. They did come out with a statement today. This is from the FISN and the Moosomin First Nation. Moosomin Downs will be the answer to a renewed and diversified equine sporting industry. Prairieland Park assets will be donated in kind to this First Nations endeavor, passing the torch of generations of horse racing from Moosomin Downs to a new generation. The statement also went on to say they will host thoroughbred and standardbred racing, chariot, chuck wagon racing, 4-H, and rodeo events, equine therapy, industry training with youth and equine professionals, and the original extreme sport of Indian relay. So that comes right from the...
It's good news. Man, you think about all the things that are going on here. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we were talking a little bit about the FISN Sports Corporation and what that's going to mean when they purchase the Rush. And now we've got, you know, there's plans to have soccer at Prairieland Park, and there's horse racing moving out of town. I mean, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of moving parts to what's going on to the sports scene in Saskatoon, which, you know, I think is quite good. I mean, one of the things that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago with the FISN Sports Group getting involved with the Rush, and, you know, maybe even the Rattlers. We'll see if they buy the third tenant of that building, the Rattlers. But, you know, for a Saskatoon sports fan, I mean, there's going to be, out of this pandemic, we all miss getting together whether it be concerts or sports events or whatever, but just to have the landscape kind of change so much over the course of this pandemic has been really interesting to watch in Saskatoon.
Well, and professional sports and stuff like that is a landscape, like you said, that's changing in Saskatoon. But it was also great to see that part of step one of the province's reopen plan, they bumped up outdoor sports.
Yeah.
So now we're starting to see the youth being able to get back on the baseball diamond or whatever, this, that, and whatever for outdoor sports in step one, and step two will be indoor sports. So it is slowly but surely things are starting to happen in the sporting world in and around Saskatoon, right? Yeah. So that's awesome. So that's what's new on the local front. And now we can talk about how the Leafs have absolutely squandered this opportunity, right? Of course, they had a 3-1 series lead, and behind us is Game 7, do or die, go home. The Montreal Canadiens won Game 5 and Game 6 in overtime. Game 6 was on Saturday in front of 2,500 fans at the Bell Centre. You're a Habs fan, Ray, so what have you thought of the Habs' effort in Games 5 and 6?
Well, if you're Toronto, you can't let a team like Montreal off the ropes for a couple of reasons. One is Montreal up front, they're not as big as Toronto is. I mean, Toronto on paper, and this, was something that we saw in the regular season standings, the Montreal Canadiens on paper are not as skilled and are smaller than the Toronto Maple Leafs. So why did we get to this point? I'm still amazed in the fact that in Game 4, it was a 4-0 shutout for the Toronto Maple Leafs. In some way, somehow, the Canadiens came back to win Game 5 and Game 6. And the Toronto Maple Leafs just looked a little bit skittish in their own zone. In Game 5, Alex Galchenyuk coughed up a puck along the blue line after Zach Bogosian pinched. So there was no support left. Puck goes right across the blue line, and Suzuki's away on the 2-on-1 and didn't make a mistake with the goal. And then Travis Dermott lost a puck battle that he should have never lost in his own zone in Game 6. And, that turned into the Kotkaniemi winning goal.
Right.
And it was just a turnover. I don't understand, I don't understand some of the risks that the Toronto Maple Leafs have taken in Games 5 and 6. And I don't understand how they're losing puck battles for that exact reason that we talked about. That Montreal, they can have a bigger back end. Like Shea Weber, there's no doubt about it. He's a presence. But up front, Toronto more skilled and a bigger team. And yet Montreal has been able to bounce back from 3-1 down to force this Game 7. And I'm kind of at a loss to explain why that's happened. I really am. I mean, it really doesn't make any sense. And here's the other thing, too. I mean, Carey Price has been good. In Games 5 and 6, Carey Price has been a good goaltender, but don't forget that he started this series in the American Hockey League.
Yeah. On a rehab stint.
I mean, he was trying to find his game, get his groove, and that sort of thing. And I'm thinking, as a Canadiens fan, I'm thinking, you don't want your goaltender starting a series in the American Hockey League. But in Games 5 and 6, he was good. He was really good.
The other Canadian series that has already wrapped up was a 4-game sweep by the Winnipeg Jets. They took out the Edmonton Oilers. That was a little bit of an upset, depending on who you ask. And we were actually talking about this before the show, Ray. If you're Winnipeg, seeing what's going on in the other series and how the Leafs can't hold on to a series lead and how Montreal maybe doesn't even have any business being there in the first place, if you're Winnipeg, does it really matter who you face out of these two teams?
Well, they'll tell you no. But if I was the Winnipeg Jets, I would rather face Montreal for the reasons that we talked about. Because once Hyman and once Matthews and once Marner get going, they're going to be tough to stop. Yep. The one thing about Winnipeg, though, is they can kind of play big hockey. Like they've got some big bodies like Wheeler and players like that can play some big boy hockey like Toronto likes to play, right? They might not be as skilled as the Leafs up front, but they've got some bigger players up front that can, use their body and size to their advantage. Montreal doesn't have that. So if I'm Winnipeg, I'm actually hoping for Montreal. But more importantly, but Winnipeg would never say that. But if I'm the Jets, I'm hoping for 3 extra periods of overtime. That's what I'm hoping for tonight. They'll tell you they don't care, but they just want to see these two teams kind of, bash each other a little bit. And it started with a Game 7, but they would love to see a very physical deciding game in this series. And the other strange thing, of course, is the fact that some of round 2's series have started while this one has gone the distance here as well.
Pretty much almost all of them, by the way. Montreal or Winnipeg might get your wish. Brendan Gallagher just scored while you were going on that talk. So it's 1-0 for Montreal as we're live here at Wendell Clark's. But Boston, New York, Carolina, Tampa, and Vegas, Colorado have all already started round 2. So this is the only round 1 game that's left.
Yeah, I don't understand the scheduling of this at all, but keep in mind that we're talking about a year where the playoffs started before the regular season ended.
Right.
It's just, just a different time.
So it is very interesting. As we are live at Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar in Saskatoon, hoping that the Toronto Maple Leafs are pulling out a victory. Well, I'm hoping that the Toronto Maple Leafs are pulling out a victory. But regardless of that, you can come to Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar, not just on an NHL playoff day. Come any day, as it's $5 drink specials here at Wendell Clark's during the NHL playoffs. You can come for all sorts of good food as well. They're on the corner of Circle and Idlewilds in Saskatoon, Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar. And we're happy to announce that the Petrovka Orchard is back on as a sponsor of the YXE Sports Podcast. So if you're looking for something great to do near Saskatoon, you want to get out of the city and bask in Saskatchewan nature, take the family or a friend out to the Petrovka Orchard. They have a great cafe that serves homemade food, a beautiful store full of gourmet apple and other local products, and a large variety of ice cream treats. After you fill your belly, take a walk to the riverfront beach and enjoy the most beautiful walking trails around the Apple Orchard, only 40 minutes north of Saskatoon, right on Highway 12 at the base of the Petrovka Bridge. Open daily from 10 to 6. The cafe is closed on Wednesdays. You can check them out at petrovkaorchard.com. Did you happen to see that Colorado-Vegas game last night?
I did not see a lot of it. I did see a shell-shocked Robin Lehner for the, and I don't know what happened to Colorado's, or the Vegas goaltending situation, but they really got worked over.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, because Peter DeBoer, head coach of the Vegas Golden Knights, was asked about it. I think it was actually before the game when it was announced that Robin Lehner was started. Robin Lehner and Marc-Andre Fleury, 2 very good goalies. Yeah. They want to have the 2-system goalie in Vegas, right, where you can go to either one of those guys. Marc-Andre Fleury had played all 7 games in the first round for Vegas, and then you start Robin Lehner in game 1 against Colorado. To me, if you wanted to get Lehner a start, keep him fresh, I would have done it at some point in the first round.
Yeah.
Because they were up 3-1 against Minnesota. The Minnesota came back, tied up the series, and then now it's
that's a good thought.
7, I mean, right?
Well, I mean, it is one game. So so if you're Colorado, you're feeling pretty good about yourself because you put up a touchdown against Vegas, right? And those are some players that have some pretty deep playoff experience. But having said that, Colorado scored twice in the first period and then a 4-goal second period. So I think for Vegas, and Peter DeBoer's been around long enough to be able to tell his team, look, guys, it's one game. Let's put that one on the back burner and totally forget about it. We didn't get good goaltending. We didn't play well at our own end. We didn't generate chances. We didn't do what we need to do. So I don't know if you are Vegas, if you are going through much of that tape, or you're just going to say, you know what, it was just a bad night. We're just going to rely on the experience we have for a better effort in game 2. But having said that, Colorado, we talked about Colorado and Vegas all year. We've been talking about in the regular season, how these were teams 1 and 2, basically in that West Division or Pacific Division or whatever they called it. But it sure didn't look like that. They sure didn't look like the 2 best teams. That looked like a David and Goliath matchup there. But, I think the other thing, though, that is really good for the Vegas Golden Knights, and again, we go back to scheduling, game 2 isn't until Wednesday.
Right, so they have a few days to relax.
You'd think that was a good thing, but you don't know. Maybe if you're Vegas, you want to just play games right away. But there's some, like I said, Peter DeBoer is a very experienced coach.
Yep.
And so they'll be back and ready. We won't see another 5-goal game in this series, I guarantee you.
The Ryan Reeves, of course, incident. I don't know if you saw that this morning or whatever, but there's a situation where he had a UFC-style takedown on Colorado defenseman Ryan Graves. It was just announced before.
He had his knee on his head.
Yeah, it was just announced before the podcast that Reeves has been suspended 2 games for that.
Yeah.
So that decision came down. Vegas, I think when it rains, it pours. Vegas got a little undisciplined, and it wasn't just Reeves. It was the whole team yesterday. Got a little undisciplined, and that led to a few more Colorado goals. Carolina, Tampa Bay, I like Rod Brendamore as a coach, but I personally don't think that team has a hope against the defending Stanley Cup champions.
Barclay Goodrow scored the game winner in that game. It was a close game, though. I mean, it was a 1-goal game. Rod Brendamore, you can tell he's a player's coach. His players love him. We've all seen the video of the players singing happy birthday to his dad. He is a terrific coach. There's no doubt about it. But, Carolina, they seem to be a team that plays on adrenaline a little bit. That'll take you a ways, but I don't know if it'll take you to a Stanley Cup final. I don't know if it'll take you, like Matt says. I don't know if that will take you to a win against the defending Stanley Cup champions. That might be pretty tough. But it is kind of interesting because John Cooper's some players coach too. And I don't think it might be because he's just in Tampa Bay. I'll say this for Rod Brindamore too. These are two coaches that really don't get enough credit for what they do for their teams, because especially Rod Brindamore, he doesn't box creativity before a game, after a game. Hey, you guys want to play human, bowling after we win? You guys go right ahead. That players love that stuff. And so that's why, I think that Carolina, they can make a little noise in this series. They can make life difficult for Tampa Bay, but I'm with you. I don't think Tampa Bay is going to be denied.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree. Back to, like I mentioned right off the top, that Game 6 Saturday had 2,500 fans at the Bell Center in Montreal. The Game 7 that's going on behind us has 550 fully vaccinated healthcare workers from, 50
healthcare workers from 11 different hospitals were admitted to that game. And it's such a, it is such a great thing. Just to see fans back in the building, there was a lot of hype that kind of went to the fact that in Montreal, there was 2,500 fans. And I thought, man, for a building that normally has 18,000 people in it, we're talking about 2,500 fans a lot. But this story here of these healthcare workers that have just been working so hard for the last 16 months. It's a great story that they kind of had a lottery, I think, within the hospitals, and they kind of drew 50 names at each one, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, just one of the signs that we're returning, or hopefully close to returning, to having fans inside all the arenas and the stadiums as well. There's been a couple of premiers that have come out, and they're expecting full stadiums for the CFL games.
Yep.
Right? Scott Moe, that's a wish of his. That's also a wish of Jason Kenney's in Alberta. One more note on the CFL. It just sounds like there's a continued sense of optimism that they will get on the field this summer/fall.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting as well.
Yeah, you can start to see that. If the NHL is going to lobby the government to kind of waive quarantine,
right,
and levels of government are good with that, I think that you're going to start to see more CFL chatter kind of develop in the next couple of weeks.
For sure. I think that pretty much wraps it up for this week's edition of the YXE Sports Podcast, mainly because I have to watch the Toronto Maple Leafs come back to beat the Montreal Canadiens or go the other way. But a big thanks to everybody for watching, and a big thanks to everybody for listening. We will be back at the same time, same place next week for the first episode of June.